Hello Tech World, this is TechThoughts. In this short video, we're going to be taking a look inside my home lab. Alright, so if you're looking to start your own home lab or looking to expand on an existing one, you've likely been doing some research, maybe browsing our home lab, and you've probably found that every home lab is unique, kind of a special snowflake. And that's because every single one of us has different goals in mind and what we're trying to achieve with our home lab, and we also have different budgets, which really limits us on what we are able to afford. Let's go ahead and get started and take a look inside on what I've got in my own home lab, and then I'll give you some idea and some inspiration maybe, or a couple ideas of just what you can put into your own home lab. So let's start with the most important piece, your bookshelf. So I don't mean a literal bookshelf, although that's what I have here. What I really mean is I see a lot of people make a mistake on starting off in their own home lab with not having a plan on what they're hoping to achieve. And certification books or just topic books on what you're trying to get into, be it Linux or Windows or VMware, can really get you started on driving home those pieces and those components and what you're trying to achieve. So you crack open any one of these, which you can pick up at the bookstore, and they're full of labs and different exercises that you'll be hoping to achieve and practice on. And these can give you a really good insight into what you're trying to get out of your home lab, and that'll really drive home some of the purchase decisions on what you're going to stick into your own home lab. You'll notice that because I primarily deal with a Hyper-V and virtualization and automation in my own career, that you'll see a lot of those Hyper-V books here, as well as some Windows certification books. But again, these don't have to be certification based. They could be any book that covers the topic that you're interested in mastering inside of your own home lab. So my main use case in my home lab is virtualization and large-scale automation testing, and I primarily deal with Microsoft technologies, specifically Hyper-V and Azure. However, this type of setup would work very well for any type of configuration, including VMware. So those virtualization requirements led to this configuration that you see here, consisting of one custom build, as well as 4 R710 nodes. And I needed this many nodes to achieve true HA VMs, so that I could move those VMs from node to node, as well as I needed a lot of compute and a lot of RAM power to power up large-scale automation when I'm building VMs for testing purposes. So looking at this custom build, there's something really special going on here. This is just a normal rack case that I purchased off Newegg. I populated it with a Xeon processor, a healthy amount of RAM, and some fast SSDs. And this is primarily what is driving my home network. So again, not home lab, but home network. So I got some things going on in here like DHCP, DNS, some remote gateway capabilities. But I keep this separate from my home lab use, since this is powering most of my home office functionality. And I keep this nice and stable. It persists from week to week, month to month. And I also do some backups in this regard. So I caution you that although it's not always possible due to budget constraints, it is a good idea to keep your home office use stable and separate from your home lab use, which you can change around without interfering with your day-to-day network use. One thing I want to caution you about when you're making your node selections is the difference between deciding to build new versus purchasing old. So the purchase price for this new configuration, which is a great practice by the way. I mean, if you haven't built a machine before, actually building your own and slotting in the CPU and building your own RAM and getting the motherboard configured is a great way to start if you're at the A+ level and looking to go through that certification, or just looking to get more insight on how to build a machine. But the purchase price for all those components and to build this out was about $900. And for that price, I was able to purchase these R710s for much cheaper, and they go a lot further and have a lot more compute power, RAM power, and just more horsepower in general. And so your money goes a lot farther picking up one of these on eBay than building one of these custom machines new. So let's take a look at these R710s inside real quick and see why they're kind of the sweet spot for your home lab choice today. All right, so you may have been looking at those 4 R710s a minute ago, thinking to yourself that that seems a tad bit ridiculous for a home lab usage. But let me talk to you a little bit about why the R710 is actually kind of a sweet spot for home lab use. So there's a lot of considerations we take into effect when we're making a purchase for our home lab. Things like size, obviously, and how that fits into our home lab environment, how much noise it's going to generate, how much power it's going to consume, whether or not it's powerful enough. And the R710 really does tick a lot of those boxes. Let me talk to you a little bit about that. So first off, this R710 really isn't as much of a power hog. You can run these off of one power strip and you won't have redundancy if one of those were to fail, but this is a home lab use and you don't really need that. The R710 definitely isn't a slacker in the performance department. You can get two sockets here, and you can slot those with quad cores or hexa cores and load this up with a lot of RAM to give you that virtualization functionality that you need inside of your home lab. You can also swap out your RAID card for an H700, slot this thing with a couple of SSDs, and this will produce a lot of I/O to run a lot of VMs off of this one single chassis. I'm not gonna lie, the R710 can get quite loud if you don't keep it cool. So if your home lab heats up quite a bit, these will produce a lot of noise to the point where it might bother you quite a bit, and it's kind of hard to hold a normal conversation. However, if your air conditioning or cooling solution that's inside of your home lab can keep the R710 at a comfortable 75, 76 degrees, this R710 purrs like a kitten and actually is very easy to deal with on a day-to-day basis. I just sit a few feet away, and with 4 of these running, I don't have any problems. And the last thing is price, right? That's probably the most important component that we take in consideration with these types of purchase decisions. And these R710s go for eBay for as low as $400 to $500. Now, obviously, as you stack up to more and step up to more like a hexa-core type processor, or if you want to fully load these out with RAM, you'll probably be looking at stepping up to the $700 to $800 range. But like that custom unit I showed you a minute ago, that was almost $800 to build new. And if you're looking to start on a new build, you may need some practice, getting to know the components and how to put in a CPU or put inside RAM. And you may not want to practice, with that inside of your home lab. But for just purchasing raw compute power, it's hard to beat all the functionality that this R710 gives you and the used price point that you can pick these up for on eBay. There's also something to be said about the fact that you're most likely going to be engaging 2U rack units of work. And having those in your home lab, it's great to read about these in a book or see some pictures, but actually getting some hands-on unit with a chassis that's very similar to what you're going to be working with production is just going to make you an overall better sysadmin. So to wrap up the R710, can you go smaller? Yes. Can you get something quieter? Of course. Can you get something that doesn't produce as much heat? Yes. But the R710 is just that kind of overall package that checks a lot of those boxes, isn't as loud as you think, doesn't take as much power as you think, still provides a lot of raw performance power, and can be picked up on eBay for an incredibly cheap, and certainly a lot cheaper than building your own unit from scratch in many cases. The hub of my home lab really revolves around this pfSense device, which acts as my router and edge device. I can't say enough about these devices. They're incredibly powerful. And even if you're looking into going more into a networking track and trying to sharpen your skills in that regard in your home lab, these pfSense devices are robust enough that they have a lot of those high-end features that you would only see in some really expensive devices. You don't have to have a physical device like I have here on this pfSense. I like to buy these because they directly support pfSense, but you can run pfSense inside of a virtual machine, so you could run that off on one of those R710s that we showed earlier, or you could run on your own virtualization device. In addition to being able to practice some advanced networking topics like dividing your network and practicing with VLANs, you can also do some really robust security feature sets inside of this. The first time that you install Snort, for example, and watch the attacks roll into even your home network, you'll wonder how you ever live without one of these things. You can also go on and do some really interesting things like with Squid Proxy, where you can really speed up your internet and also filter out ads and things like that for all units in your home, rather than just using something like an ad blocker on your browser. The pfSense gives you the capability to actually filter out ads at the level of the device itself. All right, for networking, I've got these HP 1810 24Gs slotted on the back here, and these 1810 series HP switches are absolutely fantastic for most of us sysadmin people that aren't looking to dive into layer 2 and layer 3 at any in-depth level. These are still considered managed switches and allow things for like VLAN tagging and trunking. But if you're looking more into going into the networking track and doing some more Cisco certification type stuff, you might want to look into a truly managed switch. These HPs give you a lot of functionality, but they're web-based and don't have that true console interface to give you that true managed switch feel. For my purposes though, since I'm not so much interested in this layer of the stack, these suit my needs very well, allow me to trunk and everything coming off of those R710s, and allow me to divide the network up into camera traffic with VLAN tagging, as well as storage traffic, and separate all that out. And if all this is messy back here, that's not that big of a deal. This is our home lab, not our battle stations. So if you can make it look as pretty as you want to, that's great. But give yourself some room and flexibility here to pull those chassis in and out and work with them. And again, it's not about getting the cables exactly where they need to be and looking as fantastic as they need to be. It's about giving you the functionality to provide what you need in order to complete those labs in your bookshelf. So the storage requirements for my home lab are being met by these Synology devices that you see here. I really can't say enough about these devices. They're absolutely fantastic, and they're going to make a great addition to your home lab. This 8-bay model here is configured with 4 SSD in these bays, which is in a RAID 0 configuration, which is pumping out via iSCSI to those R710s we showed a minute ago, which is providing a lot of high bandwidth, high I/O output for those VMs to run off of. Now that RAID 0 is a little bit risky. This is a home lab and I don't really care about maintaining those data integrity in any way, shape, or form. So if I lose one of these drives and I lose the entire RAID array, for me that's not a big deal. On the other side of the 8-bay, I've got some larger spindle disks, Western Digital Red type, that are powering the storage needs for the rest of my home environment. On the 5-bay unit, those are all populated with large storage drives and is serving as backup for this 8-bay model. And this 5-bay unit also will output to the cloud for some more long-term and more fireproof, tornado-proof type long-term storage reliability usage. In addition to solving all the storage needs for your environment, these little units are basically just like little home lab practice environments into themselves. These can do so much. I mean, we're talking about the ability to do DHCP within these. They can act and perform a wide variety of networking functions. You can practice things like user permissions, file groupings. You can do things such as FTP servers, web servers. So there's a lot of functionality built into these, and they're little servers in of themselves, and are going to make a great practice component as well as solving for a lot of your needs inside of your home lab. All right, so I've given you a couple ideas around compute, storage, and networking capabilities that you can put into your home lab. But let's take a look at the very bottom of the stack and a less exciting component, but very important piece, power. So your home lab is going to be a significant investment, and you can safeguard that investment with a couple of UPSs that can power your stuff and keep it safe. The 2200 model that you see here is powering the R710s that we showed earlier. The 1500 unit is going to be powering the custom-made model, as well as the Synology units. And the 700 model is powering the remaining network equipment, as well as some camera infrastructure. Estimating your overall power consumption is very important. It's going to take a lot of research and planning. And during that research, you're likely going to find that your shared circuit 15 amp breaker that's likely in your home office is not going to be sufficient in order to power all of your desired lab components. To get around that, you're going to have to probably engage an electrician like I have here, where I've had a 15 amp dedicated circuit as well as a secondary 20 amp dedicated circuit, so I can safely power my home lab without doing things like tripping breakers or causing some type of home fire catastrophe. This way I get peace of mind, and I can also safely power my lab with those 2 dedicated circuits. Does that come as an extra cost? Yes. Was it worth it? Absolutely. All right, so we've built a solid foundation with plenty of power for our rack. We've got several compute nodes that are satisfying our virtualization requirements, and the storage needs for that are being powered by our snazzy Synology devices, which also give us a lot of other functionality, all being backed by our networking capabilities that we discussed previously. So of course, all that's going to draw a lot of power, and because it's drawing a lot of power, it's going to generate a lot of heat. But you can solve for that with one of these Mitsubishi split duct units. Now, the nice things about these is that they're absolutely bone dead silent. Now, I know what you're already thinking. You're thinking that looks kind of expensive. And to be honest, it was. But it was a solid investment because it solves both the heat and the cooling problem. As discussed earlier, those R710s, as long as you keep them cool, they also run quiet. And this Mitsubishi does that in spades. So there are a lot of ways that you can solve for the cooling issue. You can, of course, dedicate all of this home lab equipment to a different room or a dedicated room. In my case, that wasn't a possibility, and it may not be in your household either, where you have a dedicated space for your home lab equipment. So I needed to find a way to cool this room. I could have done that for a lot cheaper by putting in a window unit. Those, of course, are allowed. They rattle the window, and you have to have the window open, which poses a security risk because somebody could just kick in that AC unit and then get into your home lab equipment, which wasn't something that I felt comfortable with. This split duct unit actually splits it to where you have the fan unit inside of the house, and then you have the external AC unit, which sits outside on the ground. And so all of the noise and heat generation for that AC unit are actually outside of your house, and this thing inside is bone quiet. So let's take a moment just to listen to that and see if you can hear anything on the video. The Mitsubishi split duct is advertised as being a whisper quiet mode. And I can tell you, standing right here next to it, that I can't even hear it at a whisper level. It is absolutely bone dead silent, and it keeps my home office at a very cool 74 degrees, even with all the equipment running. Without this unit inside of my home lab, all those R710s running get this room up to 100 degrees or plus very quickly and very easily. So this Mitsubishi will keep the room at below 74. You could even put it at 70 very comfortably, and it keeps everything nice and cool, nice and quiet. It is a bit of an investment, and you'll have to have it professionally installed most likely, It was a solid investment for me, keeps me very comfortable in my home lab, and it's something that I've been very happy with that purchase. All right, Tech World, that was my home lab. It isn't perfect, but no home lab really ever is. Hopefully this video was able to give you some ideas or inspiration on what you can do in your own setup. If you were watching this video thinking that some of these parts seem like outside of your scope, just realize that it's taken me a long time to build up to this point, and I spent a lot of time researching and acquiring parts of my own to get to the lab to where it is today. A home lab is an investment, and it's the best kind of investment, an investment in yourself. So if you're leveraging the most important part of your home lab, your bookshelf, then you'll be able to identify those skills that you're trying to acquire and leverage your home lab to master those skills, which in turn is going to propel you forward in your career. Good luck and happy home labbing.